Zach Cregger is my favorite emerging director we have right now, and I absolutely love his movies, from Barbarian, which I made a video on back in 2022, where I drew some parallels between this movie's form and the form of Pulp Fiction, and now with Weapons, which I just watched a few days ago, and holy shit, I love this movie. Barbarian was great, but Weapons is even better. This is without a doubt my favorite movie of the year. Second place for me is Companion, so honorable mention there, and I love how original this movie is. The directing with the panning and zoom shots, the performances with the comedic but also serious acting, and the writing with its perfect depiction of suburbia, everything fits in this movie and it never feels like it loses any steam. I know what you're here for, so let's dive into it, the meaning and subtext of Weapons. Obvious spoilers ahead, but let's get into it. Also, sorry about the microphone. I got a new PC and my settings are still all over the place, but I gotta get this video out, and hopefully by next week, I will have the mic back to normal. So what the hell is Weapons about? Why is the time 2:17 when the kids leave? And is there any significance here? And why was there a rifle in Archer's dream? Let's get into it. Let's start with the overall meaning of Weapons before we get to those specific elements. Keep in mind this is my opinion, and by no means is this the objective meaning of the film. That's obviously up to Zach Cregger. But this is just my best guess. I believe Weapons is largely focused around selfishness, trauma, school shootings, sexual abuse, and the societal tendency to avoid the root causes of our problems. Let's start with school shootings, since that's the most talked about link and what appears to be the most obvious meaning. Actually, I lied. I'm editing this video right now, and a much more substantial reading of the film is that it's about alcoholism. So let's start with that, and then that's right, us, will move on to school shootings. Weapons seems to deal a lot with alcoholism. The triangle in the O that appears in the title card and becomes a recurring symbol throughout the film is tied to Alcoholics Anonymous. The idea of parasites is constantly brought up throughout the classroom scenes, and Marcus and Terry watch a bug documentary on their TV that shows a parasite taking complete control over its host. This relates clearly to addiction, which can take over a person's mind and change them entirely. The idea of addiction and mind control is repeated throughout the film, and it seems that Gladys is meant to embody this idea. She represents alcoholism, to be precise. She comes into Alex's home, takes control of his parents, and makes them lifeless and capable of hurting each other. She says that she can make them eat each other if she wants to, which underscores the idea of spousal abuse that is often linked with alcohol. We also see how they only move when Gladys commands them to, and this seems to be an allegory on how the sole purpose for an addicted individual is to fulfill their addiction. We also see the problems that so many people have due to addiction in this movie. Paul cheats on his wife after getting intoxicated. James is addicted to drugs, and Justine uses alcohol as a coping mechanism. We also see toward the end of the movie how Alex's parents attack him while they are quote-unquote under the influence. When Gladys enters Marcus's house, we see how she takes control of him and the way that alcohol takes control over someone and makes them not act like themselves. The ritual she follows to get someone under her control is also very Pavlovian, and that certain triggers can get people to fall victim to their addictions or to relapse. We also see how people risk everything for their addictions. The prime example is James, who continues stealing even after discovering Alex's parents, who are right next to him. I also think Alex's parents not returning to normal at the end of the movie, along with the missing kids, suggests that addiction can permanently change someone, or at the very least, this presents the early stages of withdrawal and how numb people can become. We know that with harder drugs especially, there can be damage put on your dopamine receptors that forever change your ability to become happy or to be as happy as you used to be before taking drugs. The state of these parents and children, where they are forever changed, seems to underscore this idea, where addiction can leave a lifelong impact even after it's removed, or at least it presents the initial stages of withdrawal. We also have to talk about 2:17, which is the time the kids disappear. This time is likely linked to Trevor Moore's death back in 2021, and he was a comedian and fellow friend of Zach Cregger, and they both worked on The Whitest Kids You Know. The official report says that Trevor's body was found around 2:30 a.m., but it's likely that he died earlier, maybe at 2:17. Another interesting factoid is that Trevor died by falling off his balcony, and his blood alcohol content was allegedly 0.26, which means that he was very drunk. This might have been the inspiration to Zach Cregger behind writing Weapons and having alcoholism be a central focus, as it robbed him of his friend, and in the movie, we see how it robs families of their children. Or in some cases, kids are robbed of their parents. While the kids were preyed upon by an external force, we see how this happens with alcohol all the time. Think about the numerous drunk driving accidents or other related crimes that seemingly come out of nowhere and break families apart. The ending where the kids tackle Gladys and tear her apart seems to suggest that the only way to break this cycle of alcoholism or any other addiction is to get future generations to vilify it. We see this with smoking, where after the countless ads and cautions that have taken place, it's not nearly as common as it used to be, at least here in America. With alcohol, we need the same action, where the lobbyist groups are taken on by the people collectively and cast out for promoting the societal disease they brainwash us into thinking is normal. We also have to tackle our cultural norms, which say that this is a good thing and a normal part of life. A lot of credit for the alcoholism reading goes to this Reddit post by 2Internet2Politics. This is my favorite reading of the film by far, so props to you, good sir. Now let's get back to school shootings. Weapons deals with a classroom of children who suddenly go missing around the same time, and we have a community of grieving parents who can't make any sense out of the situation. It sounds like a school shooting, and then an outside force comes in and takes away the children from their parents in the blink of an eye, and these parents are then left to mourn. They pry into the school's administration to get answers so they can make sense of the crime that took away their children, but the school can only offer so many answers. The only difference here is, instead of a gunman, we have a witch. We also see parallels between the aftermath of the victims and the parents who exhibit the types of characteristics you would see in a school shooting. Even after the quote-unquote shooter is taken care of, Aunt Gladys in this case, the trauma and PTSD still lingers. The tagline for this movie has this idea of the kids never coming back, which is clearly meant to be figurative, and it's highlighting how the kids are never the same again. A lot of them stay quiet and never talk again because they don't know how to process what's happened to them, and this loss of innocence can also reflect how they are not truly kids anymore, in the sense that they are not the typical happy-go-lucky kids that you think of when you imagine the word. While we talk about school shootings, it's also important to bring up the rifle that Archer sees in his dream. The rifle has the time the kids vanished, 2:17 a.m., etched on it, and the best explanation I've seen for it is because there was a bill passed by the House of Representatives back in 2022 to criminalize various aspects of selling and owning assault rifles, and this bill passed with 217 votes. The bill was then rejected by the Senate, and it seems like the assault rifle in Archer's dream is meant to be a jab at the government for keeping these machines around that have been involved in many school shootings. Let me make it clear, I'm not taking a stance here, I'm just voicing what Cregger appears to be saying in this movie. Let's also talk about sexual abuse, my favorite topic.
Hey yo, what the fuck?
That's right, us. We see how Aunt Gladys enters Alex's house and then starts abusing him and his family and threatens to hurt his parents if he tells anyone at school. This is a pattern that many child abusers follow, where they abuse children and threaten to hurt their parents if anything gets out. There also appears to be some parallels with sex slaves, as Aunt Gladys takes children and traps them in the basement where they are routinely fed so Gladys can feed off their energy. It's very Diddy-like in a sense. There also appears to be some phallic undertones, where a stick is used to pierce the skin, and the blood is then used to bind and control others. This idea is repeated with the needle that pierces Paul and then binds James and Paul. I understand that the stick and object thing is a common association with witchcraft, especially with the locks of hair, but I just found the bloody stick too peculiar not to mention alongside sexual abuse. Paired with this, we also have the selfish component that seems to follow every character in this movie. Throughout the classroom scenes, we constantly see Miss Gandy talking about parasites, and this theme of parasites persists throughout the film, and is very evident in Gladys. Every character in this movie exudes being selfish or parasitic in one way or another. We see how Archer violates the rights of another parent by viewing the video of her child disappearing, despite her saying that she wasn't comfortable with this. Justine Gandy tries to investigate on her own and violates many ethics of her job by stalking Alex and trying to confront his parents. Justine also uses Paul as a way of validation and comfort despite knowing that he is a married man. Yes, when they cheat, she thought he was no longer with his wife, but the initial invite was extended when she knew he was married, and most likely his wife would not be comfortable with that. Paul himself is also selfish because he tries to stop James from seeking justice. James is selfish because he seems more focused on cashing money than actually saving the children, and he's shown to be a kleptomaniac throughout the film. Gladys is the ultimate culmination of this sin, as she literally feeds off of others to stay alive, which makes her an actual parasite. She is the most self-centered character in the movie, and this shows with her powers that literally bend others to her will. Her character shows the evils that humans are capable of if their behaviors are left unchecked. This selfishness also plays into the title, where everyone can become a weapon if they aren't careful. James is refused help, and so he goes into burglary. Paul hurts James out of fear of his job. Archer never shows affection to his son, and as a result, we see how his son becomes a bully. Justine inadvertently becomes a homewrecker. Even Alex's parents become weapons because they don't vet Aunt Gladys, and it's clear that they have never really spent any time around her. And then we have the literal aspect where Paul, James, and Alex's parents become weapons that Gladys uses to protect herself. The biggest message from Weapons seems to be that everyone can become a weapon if you are not careful. We also have to talk about grief. This movie clearly has a lot to do with grief, and we see the stages of grief playing out with the parents and how they deal with their children's sudden disappearance. Going back to 217 and Trevor Moore, it feels like a heavy inspiration for Zach Cregger was this accident and his grief over Trevor's death. The last possible meaning I will mention of 217 is the simplest, and this is just a reflection of the classroom. 17 kids go missing, and 2 people are left. Those 2 people being Alex and Justine Gandy. When we look at these possible meanings, the assault rifle bill, the death of Trevor Moore, and the number of kids missing in the classroom, my personal preference is toward the assault rifle bill because we clearly see an assault rifle in the dream. But let me know what you guys think 217 means in the comments below. The last thing I will talk about is the root causes of our problems, and how we tend to ignore them. This is a common trope in horror movies where the supernatural explanation behind events is never given any credence. This is because we live in a world that views everything through a lens of naturalism, so supernatural explanations are thrown out. The police department is never going to solve this case because the idea of a witch possessing the children is out of the picture. And even after seeing these events, the police will never officially say that it was actually a witch, and so any future cases like this will go unsolved. We also see the characters ignoring the root problems in their lives. Just to give a few examples, James ignores his drug use, which plays a large part in getting him into trouble and keeping him poor. Paul ignores his heedless nature, which leads to him being hasty and getting pricked by the needle in James's pocket, and this also leads to him cheating on his wife, since he enters into temptation by seeing his ex and by drinking. Justine ignores her tendency to cross boundaries and pursues Alex. Archer ignores his compassion towards his son, and this results in him never saying "I love you," and this makes his grief hit so much harder. This might be a stretch, but Alex's parents seem to ignore the history of Aunt Gladys and who she is, and why there is no one else to take care of her, and this leads to their demise. Overall, Weapons is a layered movie that seems to be tackling multiple subjects, from school shootings to alcoholism, grief, and abuse, and this will make the movie incredibly interesting to explore with multiple rewatches. As I said before, Weapons is my favorite movie of the Big 25, and I hope we get more original works out of the film industry that follow in the footsteps of Weapons. Thanks for watching, and let me know your thoughts over this movie in the comments below.